Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. A couple of years ago, I switched from Ableton to Bitwig, and I just couldn't look back anymore. Now, I'm not saying that Ableton is a bad DAW. I just think that Bitwig is the DAW for Psytrance. In this tutorial, I'll show you 5 reasons why I think so. Reason number 1 is FM. FM is one of the foundational and most used sounds in Psytrance, and there's so many ways you can achieve it using Bitwig's devices that I honestly can't put them in one tutorial. But maybe one of the easiest and greatest methods is by using Polymer. Polymer is Bitwig's powerhouse synth, and if we choose the oscillator byte in here, oscillator byte is a dual oscillator that can FM each other's, they can do PWM and RM. If we set the overall frequency of the oscillator to -12 and the second oscillator frequency to +12, turn down oscillator A's volume, oscillator B volume all the way up. Now let's give it some FM, we'll get this. See the grittiness we get already. Now let's set the first oscillator to a saw wave like so, the second one to ramped pulse like this, and I'll set the PWM in the middle, somewhere around in here. Now we have this. Wow, the grittiness of this oscillator. Now let's take the filter of your choice. I'll go with silent key bandpass 8, just like so. I'll close it, give it some resonance, and now we have this basically. Perfect. Now let's give it a random arpeggiator like so. Some delay. This is 1/8 dotted ping pong delay coming from, as the usual, Echo Boy. Now we have this. Perfect. Let's 1/8 like this. Perfect. Now in this track, I have this pad running with the kick and bass and the drums. Sounds like this. Right? I'm going to use our polymer patch in here to complement this pad and create some groove. Check this out. Sounds good, right? But it needs a little bit of bite. There's something missing. And this is where things get really interesting in Bitwig, because now I can click on the FX in here and I'll add a Filter Plus module. Now, the Filter Plus module is a saturation stage that feeds into a filter. I'll turn off this low pass filter. I'll keep the saturation to heat, but maybe I'll crank it up to, I don't know, let's see, maybe 17 dB. Let's hear it out. Wow, instant character. Let's give it a little bit more, maybe 19 dB. Now we have this. Grittiness of the patch. And now let's just take it down a little bit. So the volume before the distortion is equal to the volume after the distortion. Perfect. Let's give it a tiny bit more volume in here. And now with the kick and bass and the same pad, we'll get this. Check this out. Reason number 2, Bitwig has everything you need to create a track. From the tools to the presets, Bitwig got you covered. And this is really important, especially if you're starting out or you're making music on a budget. Having everything you need in one place is crucial and will save you a lot of time and frustration. I remember when I started making music, it was about 2010, 11. I was using FL Studio, I think 8 or 7, I forgot. And I remember I had to get a copy of Native Instruments Massive, the first one, to get the sounds that I've needed back then. And you can't imagine how frustrating that was of an experience, because I had to learn and understand FL Studio and at the same time learn and understand Native Instruments Massive. I mean, no wonder why it took me that long to finish my first track. Of course, there was the war in my country, Syria, but that's not the topic of this video. From a synthesizer point of view, Bitwig offers Polymer, which is your Swiss Army knife subtractive synthesizer. It also offers the Grid. Now, the Grid is Bitwig's modular environment. You can create almost any idea you have in mind using Polygrid, or you can just go fully experimental. It's literally just like a modular synthesizer or VCV basically, but integrated into Bitwig. Actually, I like to think of Bitwig like this. It's a modular synthesizer that happens to be a DAW. Now, with Polygrid, you can create patches like this one. Check this out. This is an atmosphere that I've created. Basically, I have a little sample in here. I think I've sampled it from my virus, and it's going through some effects and then some recorders to create a glitch effect. Anyways, it sounds like this. Check this out. Polygrid also comes in additional two flavors, FX Grid and Note Grid. FX Grid is slightly more adapted for multi-effect use, and Note Grid is slightly more adapted for MIDI manipulation. The only difference between these three versions of the grid is the inspector panel in here. See, we have slightly different options between these three versions of the grid. Else, they are exactly the same. You can do exactly the same things in the three versions of the grid. And for those of you who likes FM and loves to experiment with it and with phase modulation, Bitwig has Phase 4 and FM4 synthesizers for that. Creating sounds isn't everything. We need to mix them properly in the track to have a finished product. And luckily, Bitwig offers everything we need to do so. We have colorful and clean effects. For example, EQ8 is a clean linear EQ that we can use for almost every mixing scenario, but at the same time, Bitwig offers Sculpt and Focus, which are emulations of analog EQs that we use when we need to give the sound a little bit of a character or a bite. I mean, check this out. I have these drums in this track. They sound like this. The full mix. See, they sound great, but they doesn't cut as I want in the mix, right? So what I did in here, I took Sculpt and I've added a boost at the 16 kilohertz in here with a bell, and I've set the peak to be broad like this or wide. And here we have three coloring algorithms. We have the clean, we have tube, and we have transistor. I've set it to tube. So without the EQ, we had this. With the EQ, we have this. Right? Of course, boosting like this will increase the volume, and we will fix that later on. Now, if we focus, as the name of the EQ, on the snare, you can hear that it's lacking a little bit of power in the lower mids, right? And this is exactly what I did in here. I've added some boost to the 200 Hertz region, and I kept the coloring algorithm to clean because I've already colored the sound with the first EQ. And now we have this, check this out. So without the EQs, we had this. And with the EQs, I feel that these drums needs a little bit of gluing, a little bit of compression, just to, give them a tiny bit more punch. And for that, I'm using the new Compressor Plus of Bitwig. Now, Compressor Plus is Bitwig's compressor, but with coloring options, right? You can choose them right in here, and you can change the behavior of the compressor with these options. Now, what I did in here, I've created a preset that kind of emulate the same gluing effect you get from a glue compressor. And all what I need to do is set the threshold so the compressor starts compressing, like just a tiny bit. I don't want it to over compress or anything. Check this out. Now we have this. See, it started compressing. So before we had this, and after we have this. Now I'm already compressing a bit too much. Before, after. So it gave the sound a really pleasing character. And now let's hear the before and after. After we have this. And in a full mix, we'll get this. Difference like night and day. And by the way, I've already changed the wet gain in here to compensate for the volume boost that we got from these EQs and the compression. So basically the volume before this FX layer or before the processing is equivalent to the volume after the processing. So we get a true comparison between before and after. If you like to hear a full track mixed using only and exclusively Bitwig's devices, please leave me a comment down in the comment section and I'll make sure I'll make a video about that. Now that we've covered Bitwig's devices, it's time to talk about how Bitwig enhanced my workflow and saved me a lot of time. And it did that with two things. The first one is its bouncing system. Bouncing is just like Ableton's freezing, but Bitwig took it a step further. So we have two bouncing options. The first one, Bitwig will just render the track the way it is with all of its effects to a new audio track. Check this out. I'll bounce, took all of the effects, and it created this. Check this out. Identical to the original one. Right? But things get really interesting with the second bounce, and this is the bounce in place. And in here, what Bitwig will do, it will only render the synthesizer or the audio source. It will leave all of the effects untouched, and it will turn the MIDI channel into what's so-called a hybrid channel. A hybrid channel, this is the second way of how Bitwig actually enhanced my workflow, is a channel that can handle audio and MIDI at the same time. And this saves so much time, and just like the workflow makes it so fluid. Check this out. Now I'll just bounce in place. So now this audio, if I'll turn off all of the effects, and here I have an EQ and I have EFX fragments by Arturia, we get this. Right? It's the raw sound. And now I can add as many effects as I want to it. And what's interesting about it, and this is unlike the first bounce, if I don't like the FX fragment, I can just turn it off and I don't need to bounce again, right? Because this bounce actually has the FX fragment and the EQ on it. So now I can just add effects, remove them the way I desire. And if for some reason I don't like the original sound, this one, I still have the MIDI in here and I can change it the way I like. Check this out. Now I have a completely new sound, and what I can do is just bounce in place again. So now I have both of the variations in the same place. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Things like that helps the channel a lot. And if you want to dive deeper into Psytrance sound design and sequencing and arrangement, check out my preset packs and masterclasses, links down in the description. Speaking of how I think of Bitwig as a modular synthesizer, it's only logical that it allows us to create our own effects. I mean, let's say we need a shimmer reverb. Bitwig doesn't have one, but we can create one. I mean, check this out. Let's add a reverb in here. First of all, the sound is like this. Check this out. Right? And let's add the reverb. So we have this. Maybe give it some size, no pre-delay, a bit more of decay. Right? Now to make it a shimmer reverb, and the wet effects in here of the reverb, click on it and I'll add a pitch shifter like this. I'll set the pitch shifters mix to 42%, set the pitch all the way up, 12 semitones, set the grain, something small like this, and now we have this. Check this out. Maybe the grain somewhere in here. And the size to whole. Now we have this. See, and what's really interesting about it, I can add an LFO in here, right? Let's go with a classic LFO. Let's set it to unipolar, rate really, really slow, and triangle like this. And I can make it modulate the pitch shifting, but just a tiny bit, and this will create really pleasant detuning. Check this out. Reason number 5, Bitwig's insane audio editing capabilities. Now, I'm someone who makes Psytrance, and I use a lot of audio in my arrangement. I mean, check this out. This is the main section of my track, the main drop, and everything is in audio. And having a DAW that can edit audio and help me chop it up and push it in all kind of crazy psychedelic direction is super important for me. And Bitwig does that, and it happens in the audio event window in here. For this example, we have this glitchy part. It sounds like this. Check this out. So as you can see in here, it sounds really bad. Let's hear it again. Yeah, I don't like it. So what I can do is simply highlight this section that I don't like, right? And I can just delete it, just like so. And now I can replace it. This part, I don't think it's that good. Maybe like this. Check this out. Actually, the whole section, I don't like it. Let's delete it. Add this one at its place. Now we have this. Like this, maybe. Okay, let's take this part off. This one. Perfect. And I can, for example, take this part in here just for the sake of the example, copy it, paste it in here. Now I have this. Perfect. I can fade it if I want. I can reverse it if I want, but let's keep it to a fade like so. And what's even crazier is that I can stretch individual parts of this audio clip. So for instance, I can, let's say, delete this section the way it is. And now what I can do is hit Option on Mac, Shift or Control on Windows, I think. And now I've just stretched this part. And I can, of course, change the stretching to, I don't know, let's say elastic, whatever. See, I have stretched one single part of the whole thing, and I just left the rest untouched. I can also change the volume of this section and the volume of this one. You know, we can do all kind of crazy audio editing wizardry in this audio events window in here. These were the 5 reasons why I think Bitwig is the DAW for Psytrance. If you'd like to support my work, get all the presets I make in these tutorials and many more exclusive content, consider becoming a Patreon. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can leave a like, comment, subscribe, or check out my preset packs and masterclasses on my Gumroad. And with this is the end of this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.